Welcome into another edition of the Awesemo NASCAR DFS Strategy Show, as we are here to get you ready for Saturdays, and I'm not making this name up, the Buschy McBusch Race 400. Yes, that is a real race name. I initially saw it. I did have to Google it to make sure that I had the right race down here. And yes, that is the name of tomorrow's race course. As always, I'm joined by Phil. Of course, you follow Phil on Twitter at DFS, as always offers you some unique insight leading up throughout the week into this show here on Saturday. Of course, be sure to subscribe also right here on YouTube. Got a lot of great programming for you. Of course, we got programming all afternoon long for you. Got MLB, NBA, and UFC shows all coming up here later on today. Phil, if people have been listening to you the past couple of weeks, you've been throwing out some gems out there in terms of who we need to go with. Last week, you talked about the fact of it was a race that you were looking at, those drivers in the back of the race. Kudos on Colin Casgrella scoring 71 points over on DraftKings, and kind of looking at some of the optimal drivers we had last week. You hit that right on the nail on the head in terms of what we need to do last week. So kind of what was your take on what you saw last week?
Yeah, I mean, there were some guys from the top 20 that snuck their way in. Like if you would have played Kevin Harvick, then that definitely worked out for you. And if you played Brad Keselowski starting 10th, even though I was scared to death based on what had been happening to him of late, that definitely worked out for you as well. But if you just simply stuck to the plan of, okay, here's everybody starting 20th or worse, I'm going to mix and match them all. I'm going to try to get as many different combinations of these drivers together and just let the chips fall where they will. I mean, you should have ended up in the green last week. And if you would have taken my advice in cash and just played as many guys to the back, just locked in Gralla, locked in Burton, played guys like Preece and Newman, you should have had a fantastic Sunday last week. The only reason I can envision that you didn't have a good Sunday last week is because you got too cute and you tried to add too many guys starting from the top 10. Especially so many people chased Denny Hamlin based off of what he did. And now he kind of screwed the pooch with his back-to-back penalties, putting himself a couple laps down. But you took a chance on a driver that could totally sink your lineups. And by the end of the race, he never got those chances to get those laps back. And he ultimately probably killed a bunch of good lineups.
Yeah, what I love to do in NASCAR is I love to play those 10 times multipliers over on DraftKings, and it's worked out well for me last week in cashing in both of them, because one great things about those contests, you're going up against 35 other people, so all you got to do is have one of the best 3 lineups. And I remember when I created my lineup and I had $5,400 left over in salary. And I remember I'm looking at that going, man, am I just leaving way too much on the tail? I said, you know what? No, I'm rolling with Phil's advice here. I'm stacking the back here. And hey, it worked out. So you got to, that's why you're here every Saturday to listen to how Phil breaks this one down for you. Of course, this show is sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. We'll tell you a little bit about them as we go on throughout the show. You can play their more or less contests over there at monkeyknifefight.com. Of course, for whatever reason, if you do miss this show here on a Saturday afternoon, you can't catch it a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast. You check out all the podcasts that we have along with this show. And of course, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. Leave your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be awarded every Friday, and reviews are eligible to win for up to 1 year. So let's talk about this race, the Buschy McBusch Race 400. I have to look at that every time to make sure I'm saying this correctly, but let's talk roster construction with this one. I know you wrote about this week over at awesemo.com, looking at the 2019 race. You didn't want to look at the 2020 race because of where it fell in the calendar last year because of the pandemic. Where I thought one of the most interesting things that you wrote about was what the optimal lineup starting position was. DraftKings 23rd, 5th, 20th, 25th, 26th, 28th. Over on FanDuel 40th, 23rd, 25th, 15th, and 28th. So talk about some of the things that you wrote this week about that 2019 race and how it's going with your evaluation of putting lineups together.
Yeah, I chose that race because of, like you said, two factors. We got the weather. Last year's two races, the first race happened on a Thursday night in July, so it was a bit hotter. And then the playoff race, which happened, I believe, in October, was one of the coldest races that we've had in recent memory. So the track on Sunday is not going to mirror either of those. It's going to be hot. There's going to be less grip, but it's not going to be near anything like it was in July. And then when you have a cold track, the grip increases that much more. And I mean, we're talking about such a huge weather variance that I just didn't think that either race was going to correlate that well. Now there is something to say that if you look at both of those races, and if people have the race sheets, they turn them open, they go to the laps led data page, you will see both races, even though they were starkly different with the time of day that they were run, the temperatures that they were being run at. We didn't have like a main dominator really in either race. The most laps led in that summer race was 57 out of the 267. In fact, we had 6 drivers lead at least 10% or more of the race. And then you go to that fall race when there was a bit more grip, and the most laps led by any driver was 85. And then we had 3 more drivers lead 10% or more of the race. And if the 2020 package of the 550 horsepower package is going to mirror what we see tomorrow, then that's really going to lend credence to what I'm talking about with looking at that Hollywood Casino 400 race in 2019. You mentioned it. We had so many drivers because of wonky qualifying, failing inspection that started back in the 20s and in the 30s. It basically became a place differential, finishing position, plus whatever extra dominator points these guys could store in the process. So when you look at the amount of salary used on DraftKings, yes, it was $49,600. But when you look at the starting positions, like you said, this almost looks like a plate race with a 23rd, a 5th, a 20th, a 25th, a 26th, a 28th. This was all about how many drivers could you fit in a lineup that could give you top 15 finishes, pick up 10, 15 place differential points, and then possibly sneak in some dominator points in there. In that optimal lineup, we had 2 dominators. It was Denny Hamlin, who started 23rd, won the race, but also led 153 laps in the process. And then Kyle Larson, who, even though he lost 9 place differential points, he still led I believe, the second most laps that race. And then you look at the FanDuel optimal, we've seen FanDuel leave more than probably what you're comfortable in terms of salary on the table, leaving $900 left over. But it was still a single dominator with Denny Hamlin, and then all of the place differential that you could fit in. This is the scenario that I'm anticipating for tomorrow, is that our optimal lineup is going to be some combination, whether it be 2 or 3 of these guys from 10K and above. We might see somebody like a Kurt Busch, a Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Eric Jones and Eric Almirola sneak in there if they finish high enough. And all of these guys in the 10K range and above, they all have plenty of potential to lead laps. If this race is going to play itself out like both races last year, then I really don't want to focus too much on these guys starting in the top 10, especially if they're only going to lead 50 laps, 60 laps, 70 laps. Why? Because these guys coming from the back are going to score more than enough place differential, then score dominator points themselves, that they're going to totally wipe the board with these guys starting top 10, who have to score plenty of dominator points in order to outscore these guys with place differential.
And of course, you talked about that in your article, 2 dominator build in terms of that 2019 race. So of course, we'll talk about some of these potential dominators as we do go on. Of course, every day over at awesemo.com, we do have free premium tools and data for you over there today. NBA Big Board and the MLB main slate ownership projections. So be sure to check out that over right now today at Awesemo.com. As we talk about the Dominator build place differential, I guess, we kind of we'll go through Dominators, but 2 Dominator builds is what you wrote about this week. I guess then the question becomes is place differential. Last week you mentioned about, hey, super speedway, we're looking for drivers who are starting 20th and beyond. For this week, in terms of place differential, are you treating it the same way of mainly looking at those drivers 20th and behind?
It's, I hate to say, but sort of, kind of, but not really. These guys that we're going to get into in the 10K range, they all have place differential potential. The farthest starting forward of any of these guys is going to be Martin Truex Jr. starting 15th. I mean, I can go down the list. Each of these guys, I believe, can fight their way to the front. It probably won't be until the second segment or maybe even the third segment, but they all have potential to lead. They all have a safety net because of their place differential. Because their place differential, they just have that much of a higher opportunity to outscore these guys starting in the top 10. I really do think, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel, you are trying to find as many different ways as you can to fit in the likes of Larson, Logano, Hamlin, Elliott, Bowman. Go down the list, trying to fit in as many of these guys. And we talk about a 2 Dominator build. You want at least 2 of these guys. You definitely want at least 2 of these guys, because they all have that potential to be a Dominator.
Of course, we'll get right now into those tier 1 drivers. Those are drivers that are 10K and above over on DraftKings. So that's Kyle Larson starting 32nd, Joey Logano starting 29th, Denny Hamlin starting 20th. Hamlin led 153 laps in that 2019 race. Chase Elliott starting 17th, Alex Bowman starting 25th, and Martin Truex Jr. starting 15th. I want to start off with Joey Logano because we got a question related to him from JJT. He said, there's a driver who's starting in the upper 20s. I don't think I can play. Every time he starts in the back of Kansas, he never finishes good. I'm talking about Joey Logano. What do you think? Logano, the second most expensive driver on DraftKings at $11,100, and then over on FanDuel, he's still in the top tier over there. He's at $12,000.
Right. Okay. If we're going to do a simple, hey, rank these top 3 on DraftKings, I'm going Larson, then I'm going Hamlin, even though he starts 20th, and then I'm going Logano. Logano's got 9 more place differential points, and when you break it down, a place differential point is worth 4 laps led. So you do the math. 9 times 4. We need at least 36 more laps led out of Hamlin in order to equate what Logano's place differential differences between these two. However, when it comes down to Logano and Hamlin, I mean, I think Hamlin has a greater probability to win, a greater probability to get to the front and lead laps here. You look, he won the fall 2019 race, like we talked about. He won the summer 2020 race. He was doing well last year in that cold race until he had some issues late in the race. And I'm not too concerned about that. Yes, Logano won that most recent race here, but remember that the track differences are going to be so different and so skewed. Mm-hmm. So I like Logano, and I think Logano's a little more feasible on FanDuel since you're only getting a 1/10 of a point for every lap led, and place differential is a 1/2 point for every position you gain over there. So it makes a little more sense, especially when you save $2,000 on FanDuel with Logano versus Hamlin. But here on DraftKings, with only a $300 difference, and knowing that I just need Hamlin to score, to lead 36 laps in order to equate what Logano can do versus with place differential, I'm going to take Hamlin. I'm going to say that if you are building cash lineups this week and you're debating, do I pair Larson with Logano or Larson with Hamlin, I'm going to take the upside, even though the safety net is there with Logano and his place differential. I'm going to take the upside with Hamlin and his potential to lead.
Looking at the salaries and looking at a notable difference in terms of the salaries that sticks out to me is Alex Bowman. While he's 10,200 on DraftKings, so he's right in this range of all these drivers. But then over on the FanDuel side of the equation, there's a different salary with him. He's 9,200, where everyone else in this group ranges from 11,500 to 14,000.
Yeah, and you kind of figured that the FanDuel algorithm would have been adjusted a little bit to compensate for this starting position. But I mean, my goodness, if they're not going to bump up Larson and Logano and Hamlin above 15K with their starting position, then I guess they just don't see the need to do anything with Bowman. Bowman is a fantastic play. I wish that the track temperatures were a little bit cooler, because that's where we've seen Hamlin excel so far, is when the track is cooler, when there's a little bit more grip. You know, I believe the forecast is sitting somewhere in the 70s tomorrow at Kansas Speedway. So the track's going to be a little bit slicker. But I mean, you look at Bowman's recent history here, all sorts of different temperature ranges. We've got finishes from second and third, and his worst was the spring 2018 finish of 18th, but that's a different driver and a different team compared to what we have now. I think you can safely project Bowman for a top 10 finish tomorrow, and you're hoping maybe he can find his way into the top 5.
The one driver that really sticks out to me, and I feel like obviously there's going to be a sizable amount of ownership on him, has got to be Kyle Larson, starting 32nd. Yes, he is the most expensive driver over on DraftKings, but it's starting 32nd, Phil. How has he not become a smash play in cash?
Right. I mean, you need some very strange circumstances in order for Larson to fail in cash. Quite frankly, he should be above 12K. DraftKings should have just sent his salary to the moon based on what he's done in this package this year. I mean, when we look at the 3 races in the 550 horsepower package, we're talking about 4th at Homestead, the win at Las Vegas, and he was less than 20 miles away from winning the race at Atlanta. So he's been fantastic in this year. Best driver, best car. Never won here while he was racing for Chip Ganassi, but had plenty of top 10 finishes. And we're getting that guy at 32nd, and you don't put him above 12K. It creates a lot of. It's definitely going to create a lot of chalk. He should be one of the higher owned drivers on DraftKings and FanDuel tomorrow. But God, he's doing so well. The car is running so well. I don't see how you get away from that. He is probably just an automatic lock in cash games, whatever site you're looking at. And I think you can confidently give him a top 5 finish and plenty of upside to lead. Heck, you go back to his last 4 races here at Kansas, because of course he missed the 2 races last year. In that 42, he was averaging 27.3 fastest laps and 40 laps led. So in a bad car, what we see now without him in that seat, he was still putting up plenty of dominator points. So you're going to give him the best car in this package. It seems almost unlikely that Larson doesn't end up with a score in the 90s tomorrow.
You mentioned a little earlier ago about having potentially 2 drivers that are 10,000 above. Are you going to set up a group setting in Cruncher to say, give me 2 of these guys in a majority of your lineups? Is that kind of your plan as you're putting your lineups together?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the simplest thing, is just set up a group, tell it I want at least 2 and probably no more than 3. I think that if you really wanted to play around with things, especially with Anthony Alfredo and where he's at, that you could get away with trying to jam in Ford. Now it's gonna basically be a studs and duds lineup, and you're not going to feel safe and confident with it whatsoever. But I think that if you don't do any rules, and depending on how high you are on Alf, as we'll refer to him, you may end up with 4 of these guys. And I don't think that's where you want to go with lineups. I think at the max, you probably just want 3.
Don't worry, that he is one of 4 drivers I have written down here that we're going to talk about when we get to that fourth tier of drivers, because I know you've tweeted about him, you've wrote about him this week, so we're definitely going to talk about that. Of course, this is the Awesemo NASCAR DFS strategy show, and when you want to get access to all the premium tools and data that we have over at Awesemo.com, you got to sign up for an Awesemo weekly pass for $29.95, gives you access to ownership projections, player projections, so many of the great tools and content we have. But if you just want a NASCAR pass, you can get that for $9.95. So you can get that top drivers tool and also the projections on their points and the ownership projections. So be sure to check out that. Go over to awesemo.com/join to sign up for a NASCAR weekly pass for $9.95. And if you want to get access to all the sports, head over to awesemo.com, a Awesemo Plus weekly pass, $29.95. Stop guessing, start winning, join Awesemo Plus today. Let's move over to tier number 2. This will be the drivers in the 8K and 9K range. So we got Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, Kevin Harvick, William Byron, Kyle Busch, Eric Almirola, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Christopher Bell. Let's start off with Brad Keselowski on the pole, 9,700 on DK, 12,000 over on FanDuel. And you wrote about him earlier this week, where you mentioned about his history in the 550 horsepower package in his last 9 races at low tire wear tracks. A win, 4 top 5, and 8 top 10s.
Yeah, Brad has been fantastic. He had a really good car here in the summer last year. The pole position has been a very enviable spot to be in. Once again, if we go back to the laps led data, you can look and see what the pole sitter has done. These are the laps led totals since 2013 when we started racing with the Generation 6 car. 163, 138, 119, 61, then some duds in 2015 with 29 and 28. But then back to 172, 116, 83, 91, 79, 100, 104, and then it fell through the floor the last three races. The fall 2019 race, Daniel Hemrick was on the pole, and you would expect if Daniel Hemrick was on the pole in the Cup race, he was way too trimmed out and immediately lost the lead. And then last year was just the cursed year for practically every pole sitter. So if history is any indication here, then this should be a good spot for Brad Keselowski. You're getting him underpriced on DraftKings because of the starting position, and then compared to everybody else with their starting positions back in the 20s and 30s. The question is with Brad, can he lead enough laps here to compensate for the lack of place differential that he doesn't have compared to the rest of these guys? And I mean, you can make the case that he can, but we know this year in the 550 horsepower package that it hasn't been beneficial to the pole sitter. In 2 of our 3 races, the pole sitter didn't lead a single lap. You've got a really fast car next to him in William Byron. It may surprise people, but Byron's car has been pretty stinking fast this year, and he's run pretty consistent. We've got the wild card of a competition caution, whether it's going to come at lap 20 or 25. There's just a lot of factors that have me scratching my head with Brad Keselowski. Like, if you want to get behind that play, I can definitely understand that. His ownership right now is projecting along the same lines of Chase Elliott. So, I mean, you're not getting a steal on him by any means, but he's definitely going to be lower owned compared to the rest of the field. I originally in Gas and Go, I put Keselowski as a cash play, but the more and more I stew on this, I think in cash, I just want to go up top with these place differential drivers that I believe can lead laps. And I mean, Keselowski could lead the first segment, no doubt, but then there's no guarantee that he ends up with that lead coming out of the pits, and he may not get it back again.
Ryan Blaney, who is starting 7th, he's 9,500 on DraftKings, 10,000 over on FanDuel. You wrote about this as a possible lap leader candidate, but you did put a little buyer beware caution out there about him, as he's only managed to finish on a lead lap in 3 of the past 6 Kansas races. But also something you noted, and something you talked about a little bit earlier, is temperature and the effect it can have. And Ryan Blaney is a driver that you talked about how this could have an effect on him.
Yeah, Blaney is definitely affected by the temperature and thus the grip level that the temperature and the sun are creating. And when we have cooler races, and God, this goes to whether you're looking at the 550 horsepower package or the 750 horsepower package, if it's cool, the clouds are out, then the grip increases, and Blaney is a rocket on rails. But then once that track gets slick, then he's just another top 10 driver. Definitely a case in point. Let's go back to Richmond. Originally, when the race opened up, the sun was behind the clouds. We found out that he implemented Brad Keselowski's setup, trying to find something different in order to make change his fortunes there. And what we see immediately out of the green flag, he sailed into the top 5. He was about a 3rd place driver, and he was doing really, really well. But then as the race progressed, the sun started to peak out, the track heated up, and Blaney fell back into the latter teens. Temperature wise, I don't think this is going to play into Blaney's hands. I think he needs a night race here. He needs a cloudy race. He needs cooler temperatures. I mean, let's just look at last year's races. In fact, that fall race, very cold, tons of grip, finishes 7th. But then you go back to that summer race in July, less grip, finishes 20th. I think that this is going to play out similar to that. It's not going to be nearly as hot, but with less grip, I think Blaney just isn't going to be a contender to lead laps tomorrow.
Another driver to mention, or I want to kind of profile here, is Kyle Busch, starting 9th, 8,600 on DraftKings, 10,500 over on FanDuel. Already seeing the question, are we going with the happy birthday narrative here with Kyle Busch? Turns 36 tomorrow.
We got double narrative. Not only do we have birthday boy, but we've also got Busch in the McBusch race. So, I mean, there's 3 narrative drivers that I guess if you want to play the narrative lineup, then you got to get Kevin Harvick, since he's got the sponsor on his car. Then you got to get Kurt and Kyle in there and throw in Chris Buescher just for fun. Those never work out, by the way. I like the idea of taking a risk on Kyle, especially since he is discounted to 8,600. You look at the last 9 races that you talked about, low tire wear races. He's tied for the most wins at 1. That happened at Texas in the fall. But you look at this whole field, he has the most top 5s at 5. So perhaps something has been figured out. He's done fairly well this year, the changing crew chief, what have you. Yeah, he hasn't led any laps, but here's the thing. Those past races, we were paying near 10,000 or above for Kyle Busch. Now we're getting a discount on him. The amount of Dominator points that we need from Kyle, it has fallen through in order to make him viable. I don't know if you want to play him on FanDuel at 10,500, even though that's a discount too. But 8,600 for Kyle Busch, only needing, let's just say, 20 to 30 Dominator points with a top 5 finish. And I mean, heck, you're gravy. That could end up being a fantastic play. I'd rather play Kyle than William Byron. I'd rather play Kyle than Kevin Harvick. I'd rather play Kyle than Eric Almirola around this range. So, I think getting some Kyle Busch in your lineups, whether it be 20, especially in 150 max, could be a move that really pays dividends.
Greg's saying, he goes, I like that Bushy stack. So I guess that's what we're just going to call this now. Just play the Busch stack tomorrow in the Buschy McBusch 400 race. But of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Be sure to head over to monkeyknifefight.com where you are in charge. Play their NASCAR contests over there. Of course, they've got contests for other sports as well. Play their more or less contests over there. And when we're talking about NASCAR, that's more or less on their fantasy points. So be sure to check out there. And when you sign up and you use that promo code Awesemo, you get an instant first match deposit up to $100. That is monkeyknifefight.com. Appreciate their support here on the also NASCAR DFS strategy show. And looking at some other drivers, you talked about William Byron starting second, 8,800 on DraftKings, 9,500 over on FanDuel. Christopher Bell, he's starting 8th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting 23rd. Kurt Busch starting 28th. So there's some place differential there. And also in this tier, we have got Eric Amarola starting 18th. Kevin Harvick starting 4th. So I guess in terms of some of those drivers I labeled out there, who are some of the ones that you see some value on, and some ones that maybe you're a little questioning whether how good of a play they are?
I keep coming back to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. It seems preposterous, and there's a $1,400 difference between the two of them between FanDuel and DraftKings this week for Stenhouse. And it seems really, really silly to pay above $8,000 for Ricky Stenhouse compared to what we've done this year with him consistently stuck in the 6Ks. And now he finally starts with a beneficial starting position. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's still starting 23rd. He's going to pick up spots. And people they may be scared to pay that much for Stenhouse, especially when you can go down $400 and get Eric Jones with that much more place differential. But I mean, goodness, Stenhouse, save for last week, he has been just super consistent this year. I mean, it almost feels like a foregone conclusion that Stenhouse is going to race his way around 15th position. Now, do you want to pay 15th? Get 8 place differential points for a driver that's 8,200. I mean, that's up for debate. That might be more of a cash play than a tournament play. But I think that there is upside for Ricky. The numbers say that Kevin Harvick should be a fantastic play here. But, I mean, I bet I'm going to get a top 10 finish out of Harvick. I still have no idea what they're going to do setup-wise and if that translates into dominator points. Kurt Busch, that could be a trap. I hate to say it, but Kurt Busch could just be a gigantic trap. Starting 28th, you're getting it seemingly seems like you're getting tons of place differential. He's got a bunch of top 10 finishes in recent races here at Kansas, but to be honest, this car, it is not good. This does not look like the Chip Ganassi cars that we've seen of years past. And I know that I've spoken, okay, well, what is the impact of losing veteran drivers like Kyle Larson and Matt Kenseth, and then turning the keys over to Ross Chastain, and then having that change in driver input impacting the teams. But God, it could just be that Chip Ganassi is not good this year. Like they are, while the rest of these mid-tier teams are on the rise, thanks to the parts freeze. Like we've seen Roush Fenway doing better. We've seen JTG Doherty doing better. We've seen Richard Childress doing better. We're not seeing that out of Chip Ganassi. And if you want to take the corollary, Spira Motorsports was supposed to be just like kissing cousins with Chip Ganassi, and we have not seen practically anything good out of Ross Chastain this year, which is supposed to be the focus car of that team. Kurt's going to pick up place differential, but God, it might be 5, 6, 7 spots. You know, he could overachieve with some pit strategy and end up with a top 10 finish, which will be definitely beneficial. But I'm scared to death that Kurt's going to be a driver that's going to race his way up into like 17th or 18th and just be stuck there the rest of the race.
Yeah, when you mentioned about Ricky Stenhouse Jr., just looking at his stats for this year, averaging nearly 30 points a week. Outside of last week was the first time this season that he has not finished inside the top 20. Had negative 5.3 points, but when you look at the rest of it, high 20s, 30s has been what you've been getting out of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Of course, one of the things of when you're looking at those DFS leaderboards, sometimes you will see that Awesemo avatar up there. And of course, when you finish in the top 3 of any contest of over 5,000, you can go into the Awesemo Hall of Fame. I know our guy Tank taking it down last week over on FanDuel, what he was able to do in the 150K Intimidator. Of course, when that does happen, you tweet your win to @Awesemo HOF, win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Here you see the screen grabs right there on the screen that my guy Tyler has going there. You see the people that have going into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, including my man Pete Rogers going in and taking down an NBA contest the other day. And of course, Tank doing what he did there in the NASCAR last week, taking down in that Intimidator, winning $36,000. Kudos to him for taking that one down. Great win that he had over there. Finished 1st, 3rd, and 15th in the big GPP over there on FanDuel. So congratulations to him. So be sure, as you're putting all your lineups in, you can rock that Awesemo avatar. All you got to do is go to awesemo.com/avatar to download it and chance to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Now let's move over to tier number 3. So this will be the drivers in the 6K and 7K range. So we got Eric Jones, Matty D, Austin Dillon, Ryan Newman, Bubba Wallace, Cole Custer, Tyler Reddick, Austin Cindric, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, Chris Buescher, and Chase Briscoe. Let's just start right at Austin Cindric, starting 38th, 6,700 on DraftKings, 6,200 on FanDuel.
It makes no sense. FanDuel priced him where he has been, and I mean, just for the sake of consistency, I get it. That's where they've had him at Martinsville. It's where they've had him at Atlanta. So just carry that forward. It's going to reflect the betting markets like we talked about with FanDuel. I expected Cindric to be about $1,000 more on DraftKings. I knew that they couldn't keep him at above 8,500 after what his results had been in the previous 2 races. So I thought, okay, surely they're going to knock this down a little bit. I wasn't expecting a near $2,000 decrease. And quite frankly, where they've put Cindric price-wise, lock in cash, and he may be a core play in your tournament lineups. It's so incredibly tough for him not to be a part of this optimal because of his place differential, because of this salary. He's going to have a mechanical issue. He's going to have to wreck out. He's going to have something wonky happen where he doesn't finish with a top 20, a top 15 finish tomorrow and not be in the optimal, and people at home maybe wonder, okay, what's the optimism with him this week? Because I mean, I was down on him at Atlanta. I was down on him at Martinsville. So why are we suddenly, driving this train now for Cindric? It's simply because this track is going to be the easiest thing that he's seen in a Cup car. We've seen him at Daytona. He survived that. Atlanta, having to deal with the tire wear, and that was his first time in the 550 horsepower package. It was expected that he wasn't going to get out of the 20s. And then Martinsville is just an animal in itself. That was the first time that he had seen the 750 horsepower package. But now we move on to a track that has just recently been repaved. The tire fall off is not going to be there. You can play with 2 tire or no tire pit strategies when you come down during green flag pit stops. Like there's just not going to be the attrition laying on Cindric that we've seen in past races. So I truly do expect him to have a really good finish. In fact, probably his best Cup finish that we've seen to date.
Looking at some other drivers in this range, when we talk about place differential, you talked about Ross Chastain a little bit there, starting 24th. Eric Jones starting 27th. He's a guy that we've talked about every week and about the equipment versus who the driver is.
Yeah. You look at what he did when he was racing for Joe Gibbs. He was a top 5, a top 10 machine here. He ran really, really well. in that number 20 car. And that does, this is a side note, that does kind of give you a little hope for Christopher Bell that if he's taking over that ride, he's got Kyle Busch as former crew chief. Kyle Busch had done here well when he had Adam Stevens in his ear, that perhaps there's a top 5 waiting in Christopher Bell's future tomorrow. But back to Jones. This is the debate of, okay, the 550 horsepower package, it doesn't lean so heavily upon what you have equipment wise. It kind of evens things out for these cheaper teams. So does that mean that we could actually see a top 20 finish out of Jones? And I think you can. It took some it took some shenanigans, but we got a 10th place finish out of Jones at Las Vegas. Then you go to Atlanta. It was all right. Yeah, it was a 24th place finish, and then at Homestead it was 27th. So, God, you're hoping for a 20th place finish or above. If you want to play Jones and cash, that's fine. Mm-hmm. However, I think I would save the money and go down to Ross Chastain, who's probably in similar equipment, but you get the $1,000 or more savings that you're going to have to use for your final driver in. Jones is a guy, he's all right to me this week, and he'll probably finish with an 18th, 19th, 20th place finish. But when everything's said and done, I don't know if that's really going to excite you at the end of the day.
Daniel Suarez starting 21st, 6,300 over on DraftKings, 5,800 on FanDuel. And Wyatt asks, is he viable in GPPs?
For sure. We've seen Suarez, running fairly okay in this package. He's got, I believe, let's look here. Make sure I actually tell you guys what I'm seeing here. Yeah, he finished 15th at Homestead, had a bad race at Las Vegas, finishing 26th. I think he had issues from the very beginning in that race, and then came back and hit 17th at Atlanta. So you're probably talking about a top 20 driver. Yeah, there's not a lot of place differential that you're probably going to milk from Suarez. And if you look at his past races here in the 96, the 41, and the 19, not fantastic, but Suarez seems convinced this is the best car he's ever had, which is whatever. I think he's just bold-faced lying to us about that. But if he's going to give you a 17th, 18th place finish at that salary, you can make things work. I think you can.
We've got 4 drivers in this tier that start between 5th and 11th. Austin Dillon, Matty D, Custer, Reddick. How viable are they in GPPs because of their starting position?
I don't think you can play Matty D. I wrote about him in the Finish Line betting article to win his group. I think if you're going to do anything with Matty D this week, it has to just be based on betting. Austin Dillon, he's in the same spot. He's just starting way too far forward. If this was the 750 horsepower package and he was starting this far forward, I might be able to tell myself a story, but I can't. And Cole Custer and Tyler Reddick. Cole, I worry about SHR. They just haven't really shown me anything. He finished 14th and 7th in these races last year, but starting 10th, you need him to stay put, and I don't think he's going to do that. And then Tyler Reddick, it's the same story. All 4 of these guys are in a super tough position because of how far forward they start, and what they need to be optimal, I don't think you're going to get out of any of them.
In terms of drivers that we haven't mentioned, we got Ryan Newman starting 14th, Bubba Wallace starting 13th, Chris Buescher starting 16th, Chase Briscoe starting 19th. Any of those drivers intrigue you, whether we're talking GPP or cash?
But it's just Buescher and it's Briscoe and it's in tournaments. I don't feel safe about them in cash. And these are guys that you are literally hoping at their salaries that they just kind of hang around, that they just stay there in the top 20. And if the circumstances work out in their favor, there's a late caution, they get the preferred groove, and they might pick up a few spots. But God, this is going to be the tough thing. As many of these 10K and above drivers, or just, add in Kurt Busch, add in Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Eric Almirola, all of these place differential drivers that you're trying to jam into your lineup. You're probably not going to end up in this range. You're going to end up above with your fourth or your fifth driver in, or you're going to be going down into the punt range, which we're going to get to next. So maybe the play is trying to get some access to Suarez, Buescher, and Briscoe, hoping that people just miss them because they don't end up in the way that their lineup construction goes.
Of course, I mentioned earlier about with the Awesemo weekly pass, and one of the great things about when you join Awesemo Plus is you join a community as you get access to our Slack channels where you can talk to Phil there to talk NASCAR DFS strategy, or anyone here at Awesemo Plus, talk to the community. We have office hours, which, by the way, I will be doing office hours once this show concludes to talk tonight's UFC slate. So that's one of the great advantages about being an Awesemo Plus member. You get access to our Slack channel where you can always ask us questions, and we do get back to you. But let's talk. We talk about the value range. That is tier 4. So these are the drivers that are under 6,000. And let's just start off with Anthony Alfredo as I guess the best way to put this, Phil, is you put him in your lineup, whether it's GPP or in cash, it is going to open up your roster construction because he's only 4,500 on DraftKings, the lowest salary driver that we have, and he starts 22nd.
Yeah. I don't want people to get this confused. People feel like I've been waving this gigantic banner on Twitter this week saying, get Alfredo in your lineups. You got to play Anthony Alfredo. He's the mispriced salary of the century. He's going to open up everything for you. I am simply trying to make the point that you are getting a driver, although we have our questions about him, in mid-tier equipment. Remember, this is the same team that Michael McDowell is on, starting a little more far forward than we would prefer, 22nd, at the min salary. In a week where we need all of the salary that we can get in order to get combinations of Larson, Logano, Hamlin, Elliott, Truex, Bowman, blah, 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 blah. This guy, like you said, he opens up those possibilities. He makes things work out. In order for him to reach value 5X, you're going to need him to hold his position, maybe even finish with a 20th place finish. And that's not what we've seen out of Alfredo. He finished 12th last week. That was the best finish that we've seen so far. In fact, his two best finishes so far this year have come in both of the super speedway races. If we take his average finish in the 3 550 horsepower package finishes, we're looking at a driver that's sitting 25th. And if he gets no fastest laps, doesn't pull any hijinks and stays out and leads a lap, he's going to finish with 14 points. And that's not going to get you 5X. But the simple fact is, at 4,500, for what he does with the rest of your lineup, just perhaps you don't need him to hit 5X. Just perhaps because of what he does, allowing you to save money, and that opens up your lineup for all of these high scores. Just whatever he does, as long as he doesn't lose too much place differential, it's not going to matter.
Let me give you an example of that on DraftKings. You throw Alfredo in your lineup. He's 4,500. Let's say you want to smash Bowman, Larson, Logano, and Cindric. So you got Bowman 10-2, Cindric 6-7, Larson 11-3, Logano 11-1. That means you've got 6,200 left for your final driver in your DraftKings lineup.
Right. And now it's, okay, do I want to go with Buescher, Briscoe? Well, I can't play Michael McDowell. Maybe I take a chance on Ryan Preece. I mean, that's a viable lineup. That is a viable lineup. You have to think, okay, if I do that path with Bowman, Larson, Logano, Cindric, would I prefer Anthony Alfredo and Chris Buescher, or Matt Mills and Josh Bilicki?
I'm glad.
I'm going to take the chance.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because Matt Mills was a question that came up. And it says, will Matt Mills be better than the other start and park cars? There was another one. What should we expect from him? He's starting 39th.
This is such an odd thing. If people understand this, BJ McLeod co-owns a Cup team, Live Fast Racing, the 78, with former NASCAR driver Matt Tifft. BJ McLeod's driving that car starting 30th. However, BJ McLeod also personally owns his own Xfinity team. He has three drivers in that series. And now he's making just this random Cup start for BJ McLeod Racing. If I have to guess which car is getting more R&D, more attention at the shop, it's probably that Live Fast car. So, God, I don't know what to expect from this car. This could, I hate to say, but this could simply be a start and park, guys. This could simply be, hey, there's not enough. There's less cars entered in the field than there are spots. So why don't I just throw this car together, get them out there for a couple of laps? Oh crap, the brakes are gone after 30 laps, and now I need to bring it in. And hey, here comes a paycheck later on in the week from NASCAR. It could be something just as simple and as stupid as that. Or Matt Mills might actually try to compete, and Mills is he is what he is as an Xfinity driver. I have no idea what to expect from him in his first Cup start. Mm-hmm. It's probably not going to be fantastic. And starting 39th, he can't go backwards. He's not going to lose any place differential, but I don't know how you can project him for any more than maybe 3 or 4 spots that he's going to pick up. And at 5,300, I'll just move down the board. I'd much rather play Justin Haley. I know what to expect from him. I'd rather play McLeod. I know what to expect from him. Bilicki, Gase, where they're kind of, well, they're so. They might need a little attrition on their side to finish in the 20s. But Mills, no clue. Literally no clue.
Is there anybody else that you haven't mentioned this lower tier that you think is worth a punt play?
Yeah, it's weird. This week is playing itself out like a 400 or a 500 lap race in the 750 horsepower package, where we're trying to get as many top tier guys. Of course, this isn't. It's only a 267 lap race, but we've got this instance with salaries and place differential where I want to get as many of these guys in there. Mm-hmm. So it's forcing me down in this punt range, especially down in the 5K range. So, God, I think it's going to be a week, especially if you're doing 20 max or 150 max. You're mixing and matching with these guys, hoping that one of these dudes maybe finishes with a top 30 finish, picks up a couple of place differential points, and ends up, outscoring the rest by a considerable margin.
Of course, be sure to subscribe to Awesemo right here on YouTube. We have a ton of great shows for you each and every day. And, of course, hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. Of course, also be sure to give us a thumbs up. As I mentioned earlier, come here later on today at 3 o'clock. We got the MLB Deeper Dive to get you ready for tonight's MLB main slate. By the way, the ownership projections for tonight's MLB main slate is free premium data and tools over at awesemo.com today. Then myself and Pete will be back at 4 o'clock for UFC Live Before Lock, and then we'll get you ready for tonight's NBA action with NBA Deeper Dive starting at 5 and Live Before Lock starting here at 6. Get a couple questions in here before we get out of here on this edition of the show. What drivers are best with this tire combination, coming from Wyatt?
I'm actually going to reference an article that I read this morning. Go to Fantasy Racing Online. Jordan McAbee, in his DraftKings write-up, he goes over this exclusively about this tire combination. I haven't looked at it near close enough with the eyes that Jordan has. Referenced that article, and Jordan did a fantastic job of saying this is what the left side is, this is what the right side is, these were the tracks that it was used at, and this is the drivers to focus on.
Let's see here. Will Daniel Suarez win a race this year? Number 99. And also mentioned, do you like Daniel Suarez? We talked about Daniel a little bit earlier, but just to catch up for people maybe who missed what you said about Daniel Suarez.
Maybe Suarez wins one of the goofy stages in the All-Star race. And that's going to be a headache when we get to that. Yeah, Suarez is fine in tournaments. He's a guy that you should have some ownership in.
Of course, if you do want to get any last minute questions in there, pop that in there. Wyatt says, how many cautions on average are at Kansas?
There's not really that many cautions that we'll see. Like if I pull up Racing Reference here and go to Kansas Speedway, I bet that we're looking at single digits. Yeah, last year, and this is including stage cautions, it's been 6, 11, 7, 7, 3, 6. So this could be a pretty green race tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course, just looking at our ownership projections, there's some interesting ones up there. There's some ones that are pretty high, which I think a lot of us know that what that's going to be. I think we all look forward to that. Of course, if you ever do have any questions, you can hop in that premium Slack channel, and Phil will get to you. We'll help you construct your lineups. Anything you want to mention here on the truck race today, Bob, before we get out of here?
Oh, if you haven't read the write-up and you're trying to build lineups, go ahead and give that a read. My basic lineup construction with, I believe it's only 134 laps, is that you're probably looking at probably just a single dominator, and then trying to add in as much of the place differential. You've got Ross Chastain starting back in the 30s at 12,000. You've got Chase Briscoe. I'm not that high on him, but he's back in the 30s. You've got Grant Enfinger in the mid 20s. That's I believe underpriced. You're just trying to get a single dominator. I like John Hunter Nemechek, probably the best, and then you're just trying to add in as much place differential as possible.
Of course, that is going to do it for the Awesemo NASCAR DFS strategy show. Appreciate everyone that's in here on a Saturday afternoon watching us. Good luck tomorrow in the Buschy McBusch Race 400.